My friends, welcome back to the Smokey Mirror Podcast. Welcome to the 8th installment of the Smokey Mirror Podcast. I love you all so much. Thank you for joining me. I'm here in this episode with my good friend Kirsten Elliot. She is a Ph.D. student at University of Southern California. Something in education. I think she said it during the during the talk. I know she's getting her PhD in education. We were in Teach for America together, and so I caught up with her to kind of warm up for my Black Future Month. I wanted to see what her perspective was on the progress of education, and also just to see what kind of information she's been exposed to. Some of the questions I asked were a little bit shaky, baby, but I think we had a pretty good conversation. So enjoy. Thank you so much for rocking with me, and more to come. My friends, welcome back to the Smokey Mirror Podcast. I love you all so much. Thank you for joining me. I'm here with my friend and colleague. What is like what? Because friend sounded kind of too boring. Friend and like friend. I'm with my friend Kirsten. Like, yeah, but that doesn't hit that hard, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't hit as hard as it should, right?
Yeah, like
I can't think of a good word.
well, my dog, I guess.
Yeah.
I fuck with Kirsten heavy. We've been friends for about 3-4 years now. So she's joining me on the podcast. We were chopping it up a little bit earlier, and now we're about to record. So I told her that I'm having a Black Future Month for February. Shout out to Kanye West. He gave me the idea. And I really do think we need to be intentional about where we want to go as a community, because the best way to predict the future is to live it and to create it, you know? And so instead of looking back and just kind of reacting to all the things that are happening to us, I feel like we play a lot of, reacting to things that happen in our environment. I want us to create from an inner place. And so I really do feel like that starts with education. And so I kind of want to know what your thoughts are, on a high level, and then we can just dive into anything specific.
I like what you just said about like creating from like an inner space, because I think that is something I kind of I'm holding on to as I'm creating different things. And when it comes to education, I think the one sector that I'm most passionate about is like the technology that we're using. I think that you're talking about future and you're talking about education. I think the pandemic put the education industry, like it kind of smacked the education industry with like, you have to kind of move a lot faster than you've been moving. You have to get resources a lot faster than you have been. You kind of have to step into the future, which is essentially technology. With the pandemic, I think it really showed the need for technology. It also showed the lack of access for people of color, for people of middle class and working class families. I think it really just put a lot of things on Front Street when it comes to technology and education and where education really is. And that's what I'm interested in, and like I'm currently working with is critical digital literacy and critical digital technology, which is essentially looking at the technology that we currently have and asking real questions about how we can improve it, how we can make it for the, I guess like the success of like our students, and not just a project that we want to put out and just make money off of.
So when you mention technology, I'm immediately thinking like, are people in communities where they don't have a lot of money or big budgets, are they going to be able to afford or keep up when it comes to the technology aspect, or is that just going to be another gap in that we see? Where do you see that? Because I feel like we can develop great technology, but it's distributing it everywhere that's the issue. Have you been seeing any like solutions possibly?
So when it comes to solutions, actually I can't speak to that as much, but there's a lot of literature on like the digital gap, and it like speaks to how how they have like the economic wealth gap and like stuff like that. There's a lot of literature on like the digital gap and how like big the gap really is between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. So like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, you make this amazing technology, but like, or no, say technology is at a point where it's like, okay, this is really good. Like, say for, you know, actually, what kind of technology are we talking about? Like, is it around like teaching? Is it around like, because I remember you were talking about a desk back when we were teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still kind of like thinking about a desk? I don't want to, like, you know, maybe we need
Yeah.
to blurt that out. If you got a patent or a secret. Or,
Yeah, I actually looked into that patent, but currently I'm working on other projects that I found more passionate because I feel like to answer your question about like technology in general. So I'm thinking ed tech, and when I say ed tech, I'm talking about the kind of technology that you use in schools, out of schools, with family, with like the families, with communities, with faculty and staff, with the educators. And you know, there's a range of different technology that's out there. Like one of the most common, I'm sure you heard of Khan Academy or Shobi or Nearpod. And I guess the big pull for me is that a lot of technology, essentially whatever you create has your ideology in it. Like your ideology is a part of the things that you create. And essentially a lot of the technology that's been created has been made with people that have ideologies about people of color, about working class people, or actually might not have opinions at all. And it shows in the technology that has been created, especially for students. Yeah.
I don't know. I just, like, when I think about my experience with the kids and the technology, they were not into it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think like, I have a hard time believing that there isn't software out there that kids might be more interested in? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there's got to be somebody Black who's designed something that people want, that the kids would gravitate to more. Is it there is a lack of that, or is it more like they can't distribute it out enough? Is it because I feel like people are definitely, like, there's a market for that. I'm sure there's like better things we could be teaching, but like, why isn't it, like, where's the disconnect? I guess is where I'm trying to figure out. Like, I don't know if this is more of a policy thing, but I just be confused because I feel like there's so much, like, a gap between what, you know, where they are versus what could be. You know what I mean? Like, do you understand what I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm.
Like why are we sticking with Carnegie when I'm sure we have other ones we could be trying, you know? Like, what's up with that?
So essentially, I think the more that I am doing my research, the more people I come in contact with, and there's a whole community of like Black creators, or just creators that are interested in creating for people of color when it comes to technology. Like, yes, you're right. There are companies that are out there that are interested in creating this kind of way. But I think there's an issue of access. I think there's an issue of I think there's a power dynamic and a political dynamic. And I can't speak to those because I don't know completely like the landscape, because it's all based on counties. Like our school system are all, they're all divided up in counties. So I can't speak for all of the counties or even one county to be exact, to know exactly why. But yeah, the technology is out there. And I think the more I do research, I'll kind of find out, like, why are we sticking with mainstream or whatever the case is. At the end of the day, teachers, depending on the school, can have a lot of autonomy in the resources that they choose to use. And oftentimes there's sometimes that teachers are forced to use technology that isn't interesting to them or their students. And then there's other times where teachers can choose other resources, but might not have the time or professional development to actually be able to use it. Being a teacher is, a really difficult job considering all of the things that you have to juggle at the same time. So it really takes being able to do it right and do it for a longer period of time. I think one thing that I noticed is that technology, there was kind of like a revolving door of technology, that like none of the technology actually was able to get real roots in any of the schools.
Or like it didn't stick.
Right. It wasn't able to stick because within 1 to 2 years they were switching it. And I mean, I think everything has to be improved, but over time, but in the same sense, you have to like find out more about what works. I don't think there's a whole lot of like feedback and understanding and like communication from like creators and ed tech developers and stuff like that, and like teachers and students. I think there's a big disconnect. The people who create technology and the people who use technology in classrooms, there's like a big disconnect. The people who are in politics and decide to pay for the technology countywide, overall, it's just like the communication is kind of off, but it's
Yeah.
not like it can't be fostered.
Yeah. I think that's 100%. It can be fostered. Yeah, it's just a disconnect, a lack of communication. I feel like not the people, or not enough people who have the perspective on the ground level are being able to share or maybe be heard as much, because it's kind of like a top down kind of decision making process is what it seems like. I feel like more, if it was more localized, it'd be just so much more tailored to that community, which would be way more beneficial for the kids. And it just seems like it, this is my, I guess this is my like layman's term. Like, I know nothing about, educational structure or policy, but it just seems like it isn't like the ideas aren't out there. It's just like bureaucracy is too difficult to get real things changed. Because I'm just thinking about in our community, like in the next 10 years, if nothing stays the same, or if nothing changes, I should say, I don't like I don't think our education will get better. Like, I think it'll just keep getting worse. What do you think? If nothing changed, what do you think like would happen?
If nothing changed in the past,
If
or
not, like, or if we don't change the way we teach in like our inner city schools, do you think they'll get better or worse? Like, we just keep doing the same thing? Because I haven't really been like I haven't seen like any, like, are they going up or are they going down? Like, I really like I'm trying to like get a gauge of, are we on the right track, or is there something that really, like, do we need like big change? Like, kind of where's where's your head at? Because from my perspective, I really can't tell like if we're making like improvements or if it's just
um
deteriorating.
like on one end, I see like progressive pedagogy, like culturally relevant pedagogy, that's like, hey, there's a way for you to have practices in your like classroom, the way that you greet students, the way that you grade students, the way that you communicate with them, the way that you um, give them feedback. There's a way to do this in a way that will engage them and not harm them, because a lot of kids go to school and they are further harmed by going to a school. So I see that the pedagogy is out there. Um, and there are people that are doing research in like academia. So there's a couple different disconnects in like creators and people who are using these things in K through 12. And then there's also a disconnect between um, people who are doing research and coming up with like pedagogy and practices in like academia. So like colleges and universities versus teachers. When I was a teacher, I knew nothing about the kind of stuff that I'm currently reading about. And it wasn't brought up in any of my professional development. It wasn't, noted. So in the same sense, people have the capacity to, like, in general, if someone were to sit us down when we were doing our teacher professional development and said, hey, you need to look at your implicit bias before you ever teach a kid. You need to know what they are so that you can identify them. You need to work on inner balance so that you aren't triggered by these different things that might happen in the classroom. Like, if someone were to sit us down and explain these things before we ever touched foot on a school, or even explain, hey, if you are giving students feedback, here are the kinds of, like, here are some examples on how to do that. This is how you should greet students. This is how you should, these are the kinds of boundaries that you should set for yourself. This is how you should talk about boundaries, whatever. I think that the space is there. So I see the potential. Um, Literally, what was it, like a whole month of professional development where every day we were just talking about these different things, but plenty of people go into classrooms and they're not equipped with, they're not given the kind of knowledge that they need to be successful. or to even give themselves peace. And you're supposed to be able to like give a child peace and knowledge, but you're not equipped with knowledge either. So yes, there's teacher programs. Teachers are required to do professional development, but they have to be equipped with things that they can use. Not just things that sound good, like, oh,
Right.
make sure that your children's eyes are tracking you. When in reality, they need to be equipped with, okay, the brain moves in cycles. So for the first 15 minutes of your lesson, this is when they're most engaged. After that, they need a 10-minute break to reflect on what they just learned, because the brain then has downtime. And if you want something to stick, then that is the time that you should use. So while you're doing that break of reflection, here are some things that you can do. Like, we're dealing with humans, and there's space to do it. Like, there's a book that I was just currently reading on, like, that was talking about what I was just saying, and like the brain and students and things like that. And I think that's really interesting, because I'm like, oh, if I used to do that all the time. It'd be like, hey, you guys, I'm putting this timer up. I'm going to teach for 15 minutes. So I just want you locked in for 15 minutes. And then if I would have known about the breaks, that could have helped me even more. But this wasn't something that was talked about. I didn't know about this.
Right. How much of the actual structure of how we do the schooling can get in the way of that? Because, from my experience, it was like, you can't give all the attention and time you need in the with the Common Core and like all the, those kind of standards for testing. It's like, you need to have the testing, like, okay, but where's the balance of, giving the kids more what they need? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's like, we're testing for, it's like we obviously we need testing because of college and all of that, but there's a big disconnect from kids who really, like, they need more than just to learn about the area of a circle. They need, real skills about life development. Do you see in our future like a change in, because that wouldn't be normal, school. Like you'd have to be learning like different things. You know what I mean? Like, would you be able to take the ACT if you go to a school like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that something in the future where we're changing whole curriculums and like the days of how they're structured? Like, it's not going to be, oh, we're learning about history in this way, or we're learning about abstract math. We'll be learning about, mortgages for your house, or, how to have a grocery budget. Do you ever see curriculum changing to teaching people about real life, or do you think we're going to be locked in?
There are schools that are catered to certain populations. I have to find the literature that I'm talking about. So to answer your question, do I think that this is possible? Like, that you can really change curriculum? Yes. Do I think that it's currently happening? Yes. So the literature that I'm thinking of, I read in class, like maybe last semester, and it was a school catered to kids that were Somalian. And I believe it was in California. And essentially the school allowed them a couple of things, because essentially the school wanted to preserve certain things of the students' culture. They wanted to preserve things like their the way they dressed, so that like they weren't like belittled by other students. They wanted to preserve the things that they eat, so that what they were providing through lunch and breakfast. They preserved the culture through providing traditional Somalian dishes for both breakfast and lunch. They provided time set aside, so the students had time to pray for the amount of times that they were traditionally prayed. So is it possible? Yes. Is it happening? Yes. In public schools, I don't think that this was a public funded school. In public schools, I can't speak to that because I'm not sure. I think there's like an area of like policy and politics that I don't understand and don't really know about. But there are schools that have autonomy to do the things that they need to do to meet their students' needs.
So I guess my next question, and thanks, because I'm having trouble explain the question in a way that isn't like super biased, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to like be careful on the way I speak, but I guess my next question is really specifically for the Black community. Like, how can we replicate those kind of schools that with like the Somalian one? Like, is it going to have to be we privatize our education, or what? Like, because then again, like, can we do that on a mass scale? Because I'm like, how can we really be systematic about it? Do you think that privatizing it would be a viable route?
Do I think that this is a big debate? I think you came to one of my classes at FIU, and my professor consistently talks about the privatization of education and how problematic it can be.
Mm-hmm.
Because you take funding away from public schools in those communities and then put funding into something something separate. There's a big debate on this.
Because like, what if we put the really nice school in the hood, and you know what I'm saying, and we take years to like really make it like how that had the Somalian one. We're trying to integrate people's culture. We don't want to come in and like, but I mean, because
it's not even so much so like take the nice school and put it in the hood. It's really so much so like you can take a school that's in the hood and change its practices to meet the students' needs, regardless of what's there, and like essentially do what you need to do.
So what would need to change there? Like, is that just different practices? Like, what? Say we have we can keep the building. Maybe we do get more resources, but like, what would make it better? Like, oh, I see the value in going to school now. If before I thought it was stupid. I think
that with a school in the Black community, like someone who put a school in a Black community that actually is working very well. I had a class with the superintendent, and they spoke very highly of it. Is LeBron James and their school in Akron, Ohio. But I think one of the big things that they did that really changed the game. The students are excelling on these standardized tests. The students are excelling health-wise and like more emotion-wise, is because there's more funding in the community itself, not just the school around it. You can't just pump money into one location and expect it to kind of like heal more than just that. They pumped money into the like job like the workforce around the school, and like the families around the school, and like the businesses around the school, and the students themselves. So I think that really changes the game. And I think that there are some, like when I look at certain schools, like there are some schools that have this kind of class that you're talking about. Like I was friends with a teacher that was there when I was teaching, and she taught a career development. And she had a lot of autonomy to do what she wanted to do. And for the most part, she taught a lot of skills like, greeting people and smiling and body language and professional development. Like she, that was her focus. Did she also have the autonomy to like talk about really anything? Like she did. She could build it out herself. So like essentially, if you wanted to be a life development or like career development teacher, of course there are some things that you want to hit, but you can, whatever skills that you want to talk about, mortgages and home ownership and credit and these different life lessons. She had the autonomy to do so. And it was in a public school. You know what I mean? Like some of these schools have some of them have great resources. Prior to me teaching, my school had an auto body department. So there were kids that were learning how to work on cars. There was a beauty department. There were kids that were learning how to be a barber, cut hair.
It still had that, or that was before you?
That was right before I came. It was pulled as soon as I got there. So it's not like.
Did they say why?
I think it might have. Actually, I don't want to assume. I don't want to assume, to be honest. I'm not sure, but the program still existed at other schools in that same county. So there are schools that it did exist. They have auto body, they have beauty departments, they have like a whole beauty department and things like that. Could schools, and in theory, could they have this like life development course required every single year? I think that would be helpful.
I'm just, because here's why I'm asking that. You introduced me to Maurice, and so I've been living with him, and like I've been hanging out with his homies. I'm just thinking like I feel like they didn't get enough out of like they weren't prepared really, you know what I mean? And it was like
But
I don't know, like,
there are schools that literally have these.
but they graduated. Yeah, I'm like,
Right.
how? Like, so, like, where's? How can they get them to like?
You
I'm
have
just.
to, if you're the leader of a school, depending on the resources that are there, depending on whatever is there, you have to structure it accordingly. Like there are schools that I've come in contact with where seniors, you're getting ready to kind of like start your life at 18. And I would kind of, put that in my students' ears. But seniors, by the time that you're like 18, or you're finishing up that last year, they went to school for half the day and then they would go to work for the other portion, or they would go to it was like an off-site program where it was either like college courses or it was like esthetician and beauty school or auto body, whatever the case is. So it was like students needed the time to work on their like life skills, so they had that. But I will say part of it, I think, is just I think it's also, I think part of it is leadership, and as a leader, like really locking down that funding, locking down those opportunities, and like working in that way. But I mean, I've seen it. Like I've worked in a couple of different schools, and those opportunities are there. But yes, I agree with you in a sense that kids graduate from high school and like know nothing about credit, know nothing about mortgages, know nothing about saving, know nothing about cost of living and expenses and hourly rates.
But also, they barely know like regular math too. Like they barely know,
or
like,
even how to like cook for themselves. Like
like literally
breakfast.
basic. Yeah,
make themselves breakfast, or like
two-step algebra equations. Like not anything crazy. Like really bare minimum. Yeah. It's like, damn.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they're on one end, I feel like there are students that graduate from high school and know how to do two-step equations, but don't know how to care for themselves. And I think that is more problematic.
True. That is true. Yeah, that is true.
I think that when a kid graduates from your school, you want them to leave with some sources on how to be like an active person, on how to really care for yourself. And like, I think that's valuable. Yeah.
What like about? Oh, go ahead.
I feel like schools do a big part in creating a person. That's why I'm so passionate about them. Some kids spend more time in school than they do with their families and with their parents.
I 100% agree. I think the school is so important, and just I feel like we have not taken advantage of how powerful it is to its fullest. Like I don't think our schools aren't being used to the, like they're not valued as much as other things in our society. And I'm not just talking about our community, I'm talking about just in general. And I feel like we let that happen when we need to really be focusing on like paint, like like these are the kind of things we need to be getting past, because like if we don't invest in the future, it's only going to be like, what are we investing in? You know what I mean? Like we're selling our kids for like long-term profit, or because just pushing the problem off because it's too hard to solve now. Like, I don't know. But I wanted to ask my next thing about like mental health, because I feel like, especially in the Black community, like mental health is something that we need all the help we can get. Have you been hearing about any kind of like curriculum or practices around like integrating mental health into like regular school, like everyday school?
I'm gonna see if I can pull that up. I wish I would have just pulled some of this stuff to the side. Let me see. Okay, so there. Okay, yeah. So what I read is the outcomes of a school-based mindfulness intervention that they did in a urban school. And they basically hypothesized that after this 12-week intervention, that doing this, like these mindfulness exercises, would reduce stress responses and improve mental health outcomes and social adjustment. And the findings suggest that the intervention was attractive to the students, teachers, and school administrators, and it had a positive impact on problematic responses to stress, including these different like intrusive thoughts and emotions that these students were feeling. So someone went and did a study on this. This is why I'm always kind of like asking you whether you're interested in.
Yeah, honestly, I'm about to be I'm trying to do studies and shit.
A doctorate. Yeah, like get honestly. A doctorate. And kind of like, do studies that you think are beneficial, like answer questions that people are kind of asking, like what you essentially asked me. I have an article of someone who literally went and said, okay, I'm going to do 12 weeks of mindfulness and see if it has this impact, and it speaks to your question. It's like really verified, and that's something I think about.
Yeah, because I have a lot of questions that need asked, and I know that motherfuckers aren't going to give me the answer that I need. I'm going to have to get my own damn answer. So yeah, maybe I do need to do that, because I'd be feeling like a sociologist just sitting there, with Maurice and his friends just kicking it. I'm just like, man, I'm learning so much right now. But it's fascinating, because it's like they're not that much like different than me in age, but I'm like 4 or 5 years older, but like I don't know, it's just really different. But it's like in like a fun way, because it's like looking in the mirror, but also like, a different font or some shit, Yeah. And I'm just like, damn, like, but I see a lot. I guess this is what it is. I see a lot of potential, and I don't want to see it wasted. And especially if I think about on a macro scale, I'm like, I'd be thinking like, well, if I wasn't here, like, what type of shit would niggas be on? You know what I mean? Like, they be giving me hella, showing like love, but it's just like, damn, like, how do we make sure this doesn't get wasted on a mass scale? Because I feel like just it's too much like bullshit that they have to think about. They can't worry about, being a kid and, just growing up. You know what I mean? I'll just be hearing about so many traumatic things, and obviously like education isn't it, but just like education seems like a good place to start. Obviously more opportunity for people to, make better of themselves. But even like, when I was helping Maurice, we like calling the school, they were like being real, like had an attitude with him and shit. I'm just like, damn, like, like, yo, we're really trying to help him out, y'all. You're like, bruh, like, why are y'all on that? Like, I know it's early in the morning, but like, really, we're just trying to help this kid out, like that kind of shit is just like, I mean, I know people get that's anecdotal, but I just think
about it. Now that I think about it, because the first thing I thought about is there's always a lady in the front desk that I, kind of, make sure that I'm really warm to and kind to, but you're dealing with a bunch of people who are underpaid for the amount of work that they have.
It's not their fault.
Right.
That was just one example. Yeah. But I just brought it up because I just brought that up as like, damn, like this kid's going through a lot of stuff, and it's unfortunate, but I feel like it's the system that's forcing people to be uncomfortable. And it's like, why we don't have to be doing it like this. Like, I just don't see enough. I guess this is what it is. I don't see enough innovation in our education sector because we don't focus on it. But if we're not focusing on it because we're not putting any pressure on anybody to do anything about it.
And so, it's not just pressure, it's also money.
And money, yeah. So
to be honest, so that's my only thing is like, I think I saw this, I have to find it. It's this NFT that they're raising money to open schools. And I think that was something I wanted to continue to research, because I'm like, one thing that matters is money. Like you mentioning, there's this woman, we're trying to, get some resources for her, but she's clearly upset and has an attitude. And I'm thinking, people don't have room for innovation when they're not paid well. Right. You can't think about, you know what I mean? Like, okay, if I have to deal with 20 different families and I'm not being paid enough, of course I'm stressed out. So when it comes to, I guess to answer two questions, the idea, do you think we might have to privatize in order to really move things forward? If that means you have to privatize so you can pay people accordingly, like actually pay teachers 6 figures like they deserve because they are college graduates who are specializing in a field and working with over 100 different clients every single day. Yeah. Then, some, at least in middle and high school, then if that means you can pay your teachers 6 figures, which is what I would love to do if I opened my own school, then that would have to be what it is.
I mean, for sure. It's like, if we're building a society that's taking itself serious, teacher would be like one of the highest paying jobs, one of the highest valued jobs, because you're literally raising the future of our society. Like what could be a more important job, honestly? Like only a like doctor, president. Other than that, it's like our teachers. But the way, yeah, like you said, like nobody has time to innovate because, you know, I'm just barely scraping by. So I
Not
can't.
enough money in the industry itself. There's not
That's
enough money to keep
bogus.
teachers teaching. There's not enough money to keep the principals in the schools that they're interested in being in. There's a retirement that people, you know, essentially that's kind of interesting because being a teacher is like having a federal job. So the retirement package, you know, seems, you know, positive compared to other industries. But overall, the day-to-day quality of life and amount of pay suck.
Yeah,
And
it
it's not enough
sucks.
to keep people there. And it leads to people kind of just making ends meet until the day is over.
Mm.
Like do what I have to do until I gotta, you know, clock out. But I think it would be different. I mean, I think either way you kind of get this attachment to students and you're okay with staying after school. But when you're paid so that you can, you know, you have a different quality of life, you're able to put in, you know, more into your job. You're able to actually not even put more in, meet the needs that are even there. Like,
And that's a whole respect thing too, because you know, like that really raises the caliber of people that are becoming teachers when you're paying them, you know, what they deserve. More like it becomes more competitive, more and more people are going to be sharper getting into those positions, and that just benefits everybody.
yeah, I think so. I think money is a big thing that I would change. I think that making sure that you have life skill programs and mindfulness interventions and like like mental health should be a part of this, like physical education, PE,
Right.
like
We need
that.
ME.
Right. I think that we talked about like health in general in terms of food. And I don't think I really even
Definitely.
understood that the more that I like learn more about like alkaline diets and like vegan diets, like the more that I learn about this, the more I'm like, this wasn't taught back then. I didn't know a whole lot back then about this, like real health and like real education on health and mental, like, which includes mental health and like diet and just overall life skills. Um, but that NFT thing, that was really interesting to me.
Did you buy one?
That was really interesting to me because I'm like, if you can make this kind of money, that kind of, I don't know, this like NFT thing really blended together like Afrofuturism, the education space. And I thought it was really interesting because I'm like,
And you know, that actually brings me into my next point. I was going to say, how can we weaponize the culture into funding education? Because it's like, yo, we have all these like rappers flipping NFTs and make millions and millions of dollars like in a couple minutes. Do you ever see like a focus on the culture getting back to the community? Because I feel like right now it's a lot of I wouldn't say vultures, but the labels and all that, you know, it's all about money. It's about money still versus, you know, what do you do? What do you think? I don't want to talk too much, but what do you think about community and kind of what, or culture and kind of what we're talking about?
um, I think that people are going to be passionate about whatever they're passionate about. If people aren't passionate about their community, that's just where they're at. And for someone like me and you, I think there's now more access to building this kind of wealth, so much so that if you're passionate about your community and you're passionate about building this kind of wealth, you can blend it together. And although people that have status might not be doing that, the money's out there. Like you're saying, this person's making money in 5 minutes. We both have access to do the same.
Right.
And if you wanted to use that funds for whatever you're passionate about, if that includes education or whatever it is, you can do that. It's really like start where you are. And I'm in my head, I'm like, it sucks if someone doesn't want to use their status and access to, build up communities for people that look like them and go through things similar to them. But at the end of the day, you can't essentially make people. Some people just
Yes.
genuinely don't feel responsible or interest.
I'm glad you said that because it sounds like the future of the Black community is just personal responsibility. Like if that's what the change you want, then you're gonna have to to do it. Don't look to
Yeah.
anybody else to affect the change that you want. Go out there and get it. You are the one that we're all waiting for. You're the
Yeah.
chosen one. Like,
Yeah.
wow, like who would have thought it was actually you? You had all those great ass ideas. No wonder. Like, go do it, motherfucker. and yeah, like I think that's a great message. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I really want everybody to feel that way. And it's not like because there's so many things that can happen that are out of your control. Sometimes people get kind of offended by that, like, oh, you're saying personal responsibility when my parents kicked me out when I'm 16. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always reasons that you can feel defeated, but at the end of the day, it's like, now what? There's a lot of things that you can't control, but what about what you can? So yeah, I really think I'm optimistic about the future. I think the way the country's been going, it's been kind of wild, like, just with all the craziness with the pandemic and politics. But I really do think Black future is bullish. I'm bullish on it.
I think so too. So I just found what I was looking for because that was on my heart. So it's called Kindergarten Baby Apes. And they just posted a couple weeks ago. They have now donated $70,000 in Ethereum to a company called Build On, which is going to fund 2 schools, one in Guatemala and one in Nicaragua. That same thing can happen for the Black community.
Yeah.
And this money is going to other communities that they're interested in. I don't know if there's some, huge public figure that's behind this, or, I don't know the entire like marketing or whatever, who's behind this, but why can't we do that?
Yeah, that's definitely some shit I'm trying to do. That's why that's why I'm trying to get Scut right. Like, goddamn, it is a fucking work in progress, but yeah, being able to do shit like that would be so dope. And like,
like the blend between NFT and charity, I think the NFT and like philanthropy and like Black education, I'm like going to continue to look into, but I see it there. That kind of stuff really sparks my like energy. It makes me feel like, the future is bullish too.
Yeah, you can make it cool. Like, you can get places to sponsor it where it's like, oh yeah, like I have this NFT, so I get in, 20% discount. You know what I'm saying? Like, or I get to go to the VIP because I got, the NFT where we just built a school. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
Making it a status flex. Like, yeah, you know what I'm like, we just built my whole community up. Like, that's why I got my shit in here, nigga. Like, we popping bottles this bitch because like, look at this shit. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in that. That's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
But I gotta pump the brakes on the putting the headset on all day for 8 hours. Like, is that gonna be a future too? Because I mean, we are already in a metaverse with social media. Like, that essentially is a metaverse already. Because Twitter is not a real place, or Instagram, but like, it lives in our conscious. But what about when it is really like you putting on a headset? What do you think about that? Are you cool with that? You think it's gonna be lit?
I don't know enough information on it, to be honest. The company that I just sent you, like Kindergarten Baby Apes, they essentially donate Ethereum to this company that builds schools. So it's almost like having 2 companies, and like one company is essentially like, we're going to donate crypto so that it can fund schools. It's actually 2 different companies, to make that a little bit more clear.
No, that makes sense, because it's like you build one business where it's making money, but you're using that to fund this.
Right. All their stuff is sold out. But when it comes to the metaverse, I don't know a whole lot about. I haven't done enough research to really have a full opinion on it. And I'm like, I'm one of those people who's like, until I really know enough, I don't really form an opinion until I've done some reading.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, or listening.
I went to a pitch competition. I think I told you about it, where they were literally demoing like VR classroom, kind of like Udemy, where you buy online classes, but all the classes were virtual. You put a headset on and the professor's doing shit virtually. I think that's kind of cool. I really do think that is. But man, working from home and then doing those little meetings with an avatar, I would like, I'm not trying to do Wii Fitness, with a little thing like hopping around. That seems kind of weird to me. I don't think, but I don't know. That's just speculation. I really can't.
I feel like it kind of benefits the like how people are with the pandemic and of like being inside.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know. I still feel like there's still a whole lot of beauty in doing things, even if it's alone and safe, but outside. You know what I mean? Like,
The
there's
real
no
world.
price on fresh air, and that's one thing that like the metaverse can't get you, is like the fresh air, the sun on your skin, fellowship with like other
Other
people.
people, real
Yeah, like that
people.
stuff is still very much so real. So I don't think it can be replaced.
Yeah,
um
me neither.
Going to the club in the metaverse, going to like worship in the metaverse is not going to be the exact same thing as doing it in person.
What I'm worried about is they'll have our kids on that. Like, yeah, we remember the old days, but you know what I'm saying? Think about this generation who's growing up in, pandemic, isolation, all this kind of shit. I'm a little worried about that. So that's one thing I'm gonna be real conscious of. Make sure my kids aren't on the iPad all day. Like, we got to go outside. What do you
Yeah,
think?
and just to essentially like build the appreciation, because another thing is if you aren't exposed to something over time, then it's hard to have an appreciation for it.
Right.
um so I think that's valuable. I think as a person who is going to have a Black child, there's a whole lot of responsibility and exposure that you have to do. So when it comes to technology and the kind of exposure that they're going to get with tech, whether it's metaverse or whatever the case is, like, you have to do your part with that too. And like, I guess that's what it is when you're a parent in this generation.
What about like the age limit for giving your kid the internet? What do you think is appropriate?
Um, Honestly, we've got to just continue to do our research on
Yeah, because like who even
because
knows?
because there's some literature out there. Like, I read something about kids who are watching Blue's Clues very early, and how they did develop some skills from watching Blue's Clues, like the pause in Blue's Clues, and like searching for. There were some skills that the researchers identified that the students had from watching this TV, which is media.
Oh, well, TV
Um,
definitely programming, but I'm talking about the internet.
um,
TV, because we can have good programming. Everything is more or less programming us. But how about just giving your kid access to the internet? What age? Because when I think, I'm like, damn, I would want it to be more like 16. I don't really want my 12-year-old to have the internet, but if you give your 12-year-old a phone, they can get on the internet.
I mean, in theory, 5-year-olds have access to the internet. They're on YouTube and they click through videos of Cocomelon. And then
Oh,
they can
right.
also click on whatever they want to. They watch, if they click on videos of, if you allow them, they could end up clicking on anything. You never know.
Yikes.
Click on videos of other kids opening toys, or honestly, they could end up clicking on something that's way too out of scope for them. And at the end of the day, at this point, it really is just like you have to monitor it no matter what. Because like if you're in your head, you're thinking, oh, give them access to the internet 16. These kids are getting iPads at 3.
Right. Their friends are going to have it. Everybody's going to be on it.
So it really is going to have to be I think life is a matter of balance. You know what I mean? Like work balance, balance with technology, balance with like health and wellness. Like it's all balance. And you're going to have to really be militant with it, because it can get out of control if you don't. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
we all, with this technology thing, I think, we might not sit and like go outside for a run for 3 hours, but you could look up and have been using some sort of technology, whether it's social media, whether it's videos on YouTube, and 3 hours can pass by easy. So it's really like being intentional with it. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to be intentional regardless what age. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if they're 5 or 15. Like, you're gonna have to be really intentional. And if you're not, it's gonna show. You know what I mean? Like, your kid doesn't get any sunlight all week, it's gonna show.
No, that's true, but it's man, it's crazy because like you want to prepare them for the future, but you also don't want them to be exposed to it too quickly. And when I think about like the way the media portrays Black people, I'm sometimes wary of seeing all the social media images. I feel like they don't always paint us in the best light. I think it's getting better as of recently, But I think about the images of that are always, broadcast of us. And I feel like that does have an effect on our psyche, especially when, like, George Floyd getting murdered in the street. And it's like, it's hard not to feel like a victim when you're seeing all that kind of shit. And it's like, we don't know how that is affecting the mental health of us consuming it now. So it's like, how are kids processing it? But you can't hide you can't hide them from that. It's just like, damn, like what are you supposed to do? Like, I really think it just goes back to how you were saying, like, just knowing about how things can affect you, knowing how to regulate your body. We're the only creatures that can self-regulate. We can sit here and be like, I'm going to, relax myself. And you can literally bring yourself into a state of relaxation or change your heart rate, like no other creatures can do that like we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think knowing the power to self-regulate is really like, I think that's a like life key. I think that's a key. And we don't really grow up knowing a lot about that. Like
At all.
we don't, I didn't know about how, like, I didn't know how to control my breathing until I was 25 years old. Because I didn't know about breath practices. I didn't know what that could do for me health-wise. I didn't know how to like regulate my thoughts until maybe I was 21.
Yeah, like
We don't grow
mindfulness.
up knowing that, but imagine being a 10-year-old, or even my sister starting very early with her kids, where she communicates with them and allows them time to like just be still and reflect.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a part of like, okay, during the pandemic, I had to watch them because they didn't have childcare, and both of my sister and her husband, they were I forget the phrase, essential workers.
Mm-hmm.
So she gave me like different things that she wanted to make sure that they do, and like having time to reflect for the day was a part of it. And I was like thinking to myself after a while, I was like, these two, the 5 and 3-year-old, they're literally sitting here in like a dim lit room, just laying there, breathing and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I probably did it when it was a part of my schedule when I was a kid, but I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And like my sister's literally teaching them like, okay, these are the breathing exercises you're going to do when you're overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
Very young. And like now we have the tools to pass that kind of thing on in our schools, in our homes, because we, have these kinds of resources, but we have to implement them. Your kid could spend 6 hours in the metaverse, or they could spend an hour or two and some, another hour working on breath practices. It's up to you.
Right. So it sounds like us as Black people, it's like, hey, if you want your kid to be the best it can be, you're going to have to teach it yourself. You're going to have to educate yourself so you have the information to pass down to your kid. Because, yeah, it's like, no one else is going to help them. Right. Or it'll be, it's like, oh, great, I learned it so much farther after I experienced all this trauma, but I could have avoided it if I just knew. But man, all the information that's coming out about this, it is getting a lot more popular. So I'm optimistic about more people just knowing about it, because even just knowing that you can be mindful about what you're thinking and that not all your thoughts are you is, I always trip about that, because I didn't realize that until recently, like you said, like probably a year or two ago, and it dawned on me, and I've been tripping on that ever since. It was so easy to strip away things that were causing me a lot of anxiety when I just kind of understood that concept, because then like I would feel those feelings would arise and I could just disassociate from it. Whereas I would lean into the feeling that's coming into my body, and it would trigger like a thought process in my mind where I'm thinking some negative shit. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. But now I can be aware of the process of that happening and just stop it. Yeah. not even where it's like that was easy, but it's more like, okay, like I understand, like this is a tool, like, okay, like, damn, let me just breathe. Let me feel what's going on. Okay, yeah. Cool. Like, oh, I'm not gonna die. Like my life isn't gonna end. Wow, that's great. I'm gonna teach my kids that they can meditate and like levitate off the ground. Teach them that Dragon Ball Z is like a real thing. They can shoot energy out of their hands and shit. I really feel like if you don't put any limits on your kid, they'll really surprise. They can do some
they can really
crazy shit.
surprise you.
It really surprise you.
Yeah. I mean, think about how much limitations our parents didn't put on us for us to be this way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I have some friends who grew up with parents that were very restrictive and continue to be very restrictive. And it shows in the way that they are. You know, like imagine how much kind of freedom you had to like develop who you are based on the kind of parenting that your parents chose for you.
Yeah, parenting is such an underrated thing. I feel like the BM, the baby mama, baby daddy, I feel like that drama distracts us from the real like gift that parenting is and responsibility that it is.
I mean, I don't even know. When I think baby mama, baby daddy, I think husband, wife, I think boyfriend, girlfriend.
It's all
I
the
think,
same.
and when I think it comes down to it, I think it's coming down to navigating. I think one of the biggest things people always say is communication. But regardless of the setting, when you're a parent, you also have to pay attention to yourself. And it gets hard because you start to really focus on like this little person and what to do for them. But if you don't focus on yourself, then you know a lot gets lost.
It's like the airplane thing. You got to put your mask on first before helping others.
Right. Like, do I want to be a mom who is happy? Or do I want to be a mom who is like working a whole lot? And I mean, you can choose either. I mean, you could have both.
Right.
But I think me being happy and like doing the things I need to do for myself will help me in being a better parent. It helps you be a better person overall, a better friend, a better son, a better
everything.
Everything.
Yeah, it's important. I'm excited. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. My friend Nazi, she'll be here in like 10 minutes, and she like really loves to have like these deep conversations about like really anything.
Bet.
She'll be here in like 10 minutes. I just have to go and grab her and help her bring her stuff up. We got some vegan pizza.
Really? Is it made out of cauliflower?
I'm not sure. There's this place called Secret Vegan Pizza, and they have like pop-ups all around the West Coast. So yeah, I'm just giving you a heads up.
Bet.
So I'll go and grab her, and then we can kind of chat. But
yeah, I was just reflecting on that shit we were talking about earlier.
You were saying you were excited about something.
I'm excited about the future. I like to ask sometimes pessimistic stuff, but really just to kind of like disarm it, you know, because I feel like as an audience, it's better to assume. I think I want to assume like pessimism, just because I feel like the skeptics are the people who I really would want to win over. So I always want to be saying like common rebuttals, I guess I would say.
And I think that's good.
And even things that I've recognized in myself, you know. And sometimes I'll say or do things that are like, I know that was stupid, but I want to allow correction. You know what I mean? Because I want people to be cool with just not being 100%, you know, right all the time. You know, it's like, you know, yeah, I made a mistake, but I'm working towards it. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be better. And it takes grace as the person who's might be offended, but it also takes grace as the person who is, you know, trying to make that change, where it's like both of us, we need to allow us to have space to improve, you know. So like if people are making mistakes but genuinely trying, they're going to be more willing to keep trying. And so I don't want people to get in echo chambers where one person does one thing and we don't allow any correction. We want to cancel and destroy people versus allowing people to change. Like it's a fine line, but I think on a small, like on an interpersonal scale, like regular people, like your friends, your aunt, your uncle that you can't stand because they have a certain political view or something, like I think people could show each other a little bit more tolerance if they're not already.
Yeah.
So that's just my random rant for that.
I mean, I think people who have a critical lens are, I think a critical lens is important because you ask questions that require people to elaborate and like think deeper about the things that they're doing and working on. So I think a critical lens is dope. It can be kind of hard because sometimes having a critical lens can lead to, I don't know, at least when it comes to literature, sometimes some of the critical literature I read, I'm like, this is way too wordy. Like, I understand that you're being critical, but I won't understand what you're saying
Right.
in like a more plain way. But I don't know. I think a critical lens is dope. Having a critical lens and having friends with a lens like that doesn't really scare me.
Yeah.
I think I expose myself to a lot of things that, you know, like I think for every question that you've asked me, there's been some literature that I've been exposed to where someone is like kind of related to some of the your question. Like you asked about mindfulness. I know someone who's gone into a school and done that. Like you asked about like schools cater to like Black needs and students' needs, and like there's some literature there. I just feel like the more you expose yourself, people who ask like different kinds of questions, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really phase you. So
That's
I mean, I'm
interesting.
down with it.
I definitely want to go back to school eventually. I feel like I know what I would want to do now. I definitely want to get into psychology. I don't know if I want to just be regulated to education, but I do see a lot of value in it. But I think psychology for sure, because I think there's just a lot to be learned, and that shit, and it's fascinating. Like I like to learn about it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how like through conversation and communicating with another person and different practices that we can not only like self-regulate but really like change change ourselves. Like I think it's really interesting, and like through psychology you're able to like ask people questions, have conversations, show them different things to listen to, and they're able to like reinvent themselves.
Yeah, that's super dope. And
You know, through psychology.
even just having conversations with regular people, you start to understand so many things about yourself just by talking to somebody else. Like I've been having that experience on the podcast. Like I've been learning a lot about me just by learning about other people, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it's something you can only really get what I'm saying if you've kind of experienced it. I feel like, because it sounds kind of stupid. Like, what do you mean learning about yourself while listening to somebody? But it's kind of like you're noticing how you feel or what you're thinking based off of what somebody's saying. So you can realize like, whoa, like I'm kind of biased here. You know what I mean? Like based off of how your body's reacting, it's like, oh, okay, like that's kind of telling me something. It's been kind of interesting it's a weird experience, you know?
Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks to some of the questions I've been asking you recently when it comes to awareness, because I think that you continue to reflect and just delve deeper and deeper into like being aware of yourself. And I think I kind of question like, how are you this way? What makes you, you know, like what makes you like that? And, you know, I think a couple of factors, like you being a heterosexual male, Black male, you being like your age, a couple of things just, I don't know. I'm like, how is he like this? Why is he like this?
What does being a heterosexual male have to do with it though?
Nothing. I'm just talking about your identity, honestly.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I don't think it matters, but you just being like your age, a couple of different things. I'm like, okay, what, how is he like? What has really helped him to continue to like? What has helped you on your like awareness journey to continue to be like, okay, well, my body is telling me this. Why am I thinking like this? Why am I saying these things? Why am I treating people this way? A lot of people don't ask themselves that.
I mean,
yeah, so I'm kind of curious. I've always kind of been curious about that.
yeah, like the things I've been reading, like kind of like what I was just reading to you earlier, the books, the podcasts I listened to, a lot of that Jordan Peterson stuff has been getting me thinking. But it's like all these things, I'll hear them and it won't be like I learned it. It'll be like I remembered it, like, oh, like, or things just made so much more sense. And so as I continue to just expose myself to that information, it starts to make sense mechanically on how I can do it on an everyday basis. And it starts to make sense why or no, well, I wouldn't say it starts to make sense. I start to understand like how to kind of how much of what I do isn't really my doing. I guess it's kind of what what I realized. And so in order to when I say that, I mean like consciously, like most of your behavior isn't conscious. And so it's like, all right, a lot of my behavior is automatic. I need to pay attention to to the outcomes that I'm getting so I can realize like, all right, what about me do I need to change? And so it's like the easiest way to do that is by interacting with somebody else because they're giving you that real-time feedback. You don't have to look in the mirror, you're looking at somebody else. So it's like, oh, okay, like if I say this and it offends them, then maybe I need to reevaluate like where did I think it was okay for me to say that? You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you wouldn't know that unless you just like, we're reading the kind of shit that I be reading. And that's why I kind of want more, I want to get into it. But I've been kind of like, I wouldn't say chickening out, but I haven't figured out a way to present the information that's interesting and succinct yet. So I'm kind of struggling through that. But
Mm,
on my own personal, that's kind of why I do the podcast, so I can kind of just talk freely about stuff like this
mhm.
with people who
Um,
want to go there.
I'm gonna go grab my friend Nati, like a 5 minute break, and we'll be back.
I bet. I'll keep the people on ice. We're kicking it at the Scott House, cooling. I got my blue cup filled with water per usual because I don't drink enough water. I'm always thirsty. Young Thug's playing in the background, Special in the Gang or in the living room kicking it. It's a Saturday evening, 8:38 p.m. Miami. It's probably like 70 degrees. Wherever you're at right now, just want to thank you for tuning in. I'm glad we're on this frequency together, kicking it. If you think about how big the universe is and it's big as hell, uh, and you're spending time with me. So I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And I want to encourage you to remember who you really are and don't sell yourself short. And that I love you a lot. I love you very much. Okay. I just kind of opened my minds, wanted to see what would come out. That's kind of all that came out. I thought maybe something profound would roll out. You never know. It's kind of like if you imagine one of those, like you go to a bowling alley and they got those things that shoot the bowling balls out, like when after you bowl, it shoots the ball out. That's kind of what I was, I'm like waiting, what's gonna come out of here? Like anything good? No, okay. All right, whatever. I'm working on it. I gotta get better on freestyling, whatever. I can't believe I didn't have anything else to say. I just let that 30 seconds go by without saying anything. Right now, what books am I reading right now? I got Atomic Habits. Oh, I got Wisdom Codes. Gregory B. Greg Braden. That's my guy. I gotta put him on a t-shirt. Not the bad way though. Oh, I meant to bring this up when we talked about praying, but I didn't even get to read it yet. So no, real Scott shit though. That's the whole point of this shit, bro. Spreading knowledge using tactics. The Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, let me just, what I'm saying? Psalm 91. Pyramid text. Yeah, damn, I'm definitely gonna have to cut this. I didn't make it interesting at all. I could have talked about my day. What did I do today? Took some pictures. The pictures are kind of lit. I'm not even gonna lie. Shout out to me. Been going crazy on the pictures. Did I want to post today? I feel like I did. Scared. Scared. Ooh. Yeah, Smokey Mirror season 2. This picture is hard as fuck. I'm definitely gonna do this for the season 2 pick. This shit hard.